Welcome to the Couple-preneurs Show, helping couples in business develop structure and strategies that nurture the balance between business and home, bringing you interviews and insights to give you the secret sauce of power couples. Here are your hosts, Oscar and Kaya Frazier.
Couple-preneurs, entrepreneurs, those in business, those thinking about getting into business. Some folks that might be afraid to get into business. If any of those things sound remotely like you, this show is absolutely for you. Today, I'm especially excited to have a great conversation with a gentleman that I have a great deal of respect for that's in the financial planning industry. But before we do that, let me turn it over to Kai so she can do our sponsors.
All right. Today we have Talk Shirt to Me. They are responsible for all those cool slogan shirts that you see out there with those cool sayings on them. If you're looking for a slogan shirt, please check them out at talkshirttome.com. It's spelled exactly how it sounds, very simple and to the point. Then we have Carolina Runners. They are a family-owned and operated trucking company. So all of those owner-operators out there that are looking for an authority, please make sure that you check out Carolina Runners. You can find them at carolina-runners.com.
Man, you're pretty good at this stuff.
Yep.
One day I hope to aspire to be just as good as you are.
You got to give the sponsors that spotlight.
All right, so let me tell a funny story that as far as why I feel this conversation is so important. When I first graduated college, I was probably making, I think then I was so excited. I was at maybe $60,000. I thought I was rich. Hey, I was young, young, dumb, and swift at the tongue, right?
Okay.
So nonetheless, I moved out to Norfolk, Virginia. And in my mind, I felt like I was going to be able to pretty much do whatever I needed to do financially, right? So I remember calling my parents when I first moved there. And I said, look, Mom, Dad, I'm super excited to talk to you guys about my first real purchase, right? And they said, so what is it, right? And I explained to them, it was back then, you remember the Lincoln Navigators, right?
Okay.
But it was the Aviators, like the new ones that were a little bit smaller and was fully loaded, but it was going to cost me because I didn't have really established credit. It was going to be like $895 a month for the car payment. Now, what I didn't talk about also was the fact that the rent that I was paying may have been right around $980, something like that. And all of this, I was so excited to call my parents and talk to them about my financial plan, right? Yeah. So I called my dad. Unfortunately, my dad passed away, as most of you know. Last year, he passed away. But one of the things that he said to me was, I said, look, Dad, I'm excited about this car. I'm ready to get going. What do you think? And he said, well, son, you might want to get your first check before you actually start planning out all of your money. Yeah. Needless to say, I did not get the truck, but I made so many mistakes with my money in the beginning just because I didn't know any better. I really didn't know. And this was prior to becoming an entrepreneur. And even once we became entrepreneurs, there were some times when we needed to understand what we were doing, why we were doing it, and the mistakes to try to avoid. Yeah. So fast forwarding to this old gray-haired man that I am now, right? Well, almost gray. I got a couple of grays in there. Maybe one or two.
You got gray hair.
Hey, it's okay. It's okay. I'm feeling very open to that. I want to talk about this kind of stuff. But the reason why, again, to kind of bring it full circle, one of the reasons why I'm so excited today to introduce a gentleman to you all is because I wish I knew someone like him when I was first starting out, and even now, from a financial planning perspective. So without further ado, let me introduce to all of you Mr. Jim Crider. Jim, how's it going?
Oscar, man, thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely, man. So it's our understanding, man, that you're a husband, a dad, and the CEO of Intentional Living FP. Now, if you can, just walk us through what it is that you do, how did you get into it, and let's just flow from there.
Yeah, so I'll start with laying out what I do now, and then we'll go all the way back to how I got to where I started, and we'll bridge to where I am again. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I own a financial planning firm called Intentional Living FP. We work specifically with young families who desire early financial independence. And what that looks like, the definition of financial planning is, if you ask 100 financial planners what that is, you'll probably get 120 different answers. But really, my job is to live anywhere and everywhere that my family's life and money meet. So that's what we do and who we do that for. How I got into this, probably 7 or so years back, I was doing sales for a company, and I'm a horrible salesman. So I was doomed to fail from the get-go. But I was the manager of sales for a company and found out that they were doing some shady stuff. So I left. I left that company without a plan, and that led to a prolonged period of unemployment. And during that time, man, I really started thinking about money and stress and how money is really it's the number one cause of divorce in the U.S. year after year.
Absolutely.
So I started thinking, man, I wish I would love to be able to help families actually have healthy conversations around money and actually use their money for what's important to them in life. I didn't know at that point what a financial planner was or a CFP is or any of those things. I just knew, God, that would be an amazing way, an amazing career to get into and a way to spend my time. But that's what got me in the rabbit hole of financial planning. And since then, I've just continued to grow in my professional skills and all of that fun stuff, and as well as just progress in the business to where I am now with running my own financial planning firm and really going deep in these relationships I get to have with the clients I get to serve.
That's pretty awesome. I like the personal touch, though, that you're able to kind of reach them where they are and then expose them to ways to actually leverage their money to do the things that they desire to do. I like that personal touch there.
Yeah, that's what makes it exciting. It's not about the money; it's about what the money's there for. And yeah, of course, we like to see investments and tax savings and increase of net worth, but the reason that excites me is because the more that you have is the more resources you have means the more you have to deploy for what's important to you in life. And that means having more time freedom with your family, or being able to give more generously to causes you care about, or being able to invest into other people or businesses. That's what excites me. I don't get excited about mutual funds and numbers per se. It's exciting because it's a way of furthering what's important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you, I mean, you made a really, really valid point that I think a lot of our listeners can certainly relate to, which is, the fact that money and that being a conversation sometimes is a bit touchy, right? And it is something that, whether you have money or you don't, whenever the conversation comes up, it's usually kind of one of those like, how do I touch this? How do I avoid certain areas of my? It certainly does.
Like anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jim, what would it look like if I think you said your target audience is some younger people coming out, maybe young families that are looking of ways to do better with their money, if you will. What does that look like for them in their first interaction with your company?
Yeah, it can bring a lot of anxiety and it can be very touchy. Money seems to be really the last taboo out there. There's people go out. I've seen things. People go on the streets of New York City and these big cities and say like, "Hey, when was the last time that you had sex?" And people answer that question, but the moment you say, "Hey, how much do you have in your bank account?" everyone freaks out and runs off. So
they're like, "Whoa, easy, cowboy, easy."
Yeah.
That's so
Too
true.
much.
That's so true.
Exactly. And I think that is because the way you spend money and the way you spend your time is really indicative to what's important to you in life. And I feel that it's very touchy because a lot of people say that one thing's important to them, yet their time and resources are going towards another. And that can be a very sore topic to try to really probe into. So foundationally, how we help our clients is from the get-go is really identifying, helping the individuals and the couples within themselves. And then finally I come into the picture and I want to understand like what is truly important to you. And I'm not talking about surface level goals of like how much money do you want to have and when do you want to retire. I want to understand truly, who are you? Who do you hope to be? What do you want to do with your life? How do you want to be known? And once we've established that, it really opens the conversation for then establishing goals. And then from there, once we've truly identified what's important to you, the values you have, the goals associated with those values, then we can more easily articulate and navigate the decisions you're going to have to make and purposely take action with your resources. And from there, it's actually able to align your day-to-day actions and your decisions with really what you're trying to get at in your life.
That's something I wish that we had, when we first got out. I mean, and this is, full disclosure, man. I'm thinking when Kai and I first started dating, let's see, back in, 2007?
Yeah.
We were making good money, but we were really just kind of spending it. We really weren't, saving anything. Not really. I mean, maybe every once in a while we might save, but it pretty much would be by mistake. It wouldn't be like we were saving because we wanted to save. It'd be like, oh, I forgot to spend this extra $10,000. What do we do? And so it's kind of like I wish that I'd had scenarios like that. So speaking of that first interaction, when it comes to like that dollar threshold, is there a dollar amount that someone should, before they go and get a financial planner, should they already have a certain amount of income or revenue or capital, or what does that look like from that perspective?
Yeah, well, historically, financial planners would say yes. And the reason there is, the very traditional advisors generally charge based off a percentage of assets under management. So they're incentivized to work with people who had assets to manage. Yeah. However, I would definitely argue someone's need for financial planning and just someone's need for a guide through the ever-changing landscape of a financial life is not dependent upon how much money you have, but rather the complexity of your situation. Mm-hmm. So I would say that if you have $2 million just sitting inside of a 401k and you're just looking to, how do I spend this down and support myself in my lifestyle, I'd argue that's actually a lot simpler than someone who's 32 and they're looking to leave their corporate job and start their own business. And maybe the other spouse is looking to stay at home with the kids. So how do you start a business and navigate all the decisions there? What type of company or entity you put that in? How do you provide income to your family while you're trying to grow a business? What do we do about healthcare now that we're leaving our corporate job? What about college savings? Living off, what about debt? Living off investments? That, to me, that is the meaty part of financial planning. It's not, hey, I've accumulated $1 million, now I need help. That's just babysitting money that's already there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense, and I think that's what people really need to understand, because typically, and I think this. I mean, Jim, being that you're in this particular industry, like a lot of times if I'm like LinkedIn or if I'm out at dinner or something, sometimes it's almost like I'll get like those financial planners that kind of come up and they kind of cold call you, or they kind of walk up to you, and then once you give them a chance, like that second interaction kind of really is, well, how much assets do you have, and they kind of want to try to kind of feel that part out. I totally get it, because they have to be very, specific, right, and selective, so they don't end up getting a whole bunch of clients that really don't make them any money, right? But I think your approach to it and trying to understand how the money works, I feel like that's something that I've not heard before when it comes to financial planners.
I think it's one of those combinations of, like, sometimes you run into financial planners that it's like a one size fits all type of scenario.
Yeah.
And that's scary, because it's like, well, my lifestyle is different from someone else's lifestyle. So how are you going to help me specifically? And some of them can't navigate that. So that's why I was saying that personal touch is very impressive in what you do, because like if we had run into somebody that was personalizing it for us, a while back, then I think we would have been more open to having a financial planner helping us earlier on in life.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I experienced. We had one some years ago, Jim, and it was I would say it was more of like a bland experience. How it's almost everything was very vanilla, and it was like, okay, how much you guys want to start up with? I think then we started maybe like $30K. And he put it into like some mutual funds, and he put it into a few different things. And it was kind of like, what's next, I guess, so to speak, right? It was a little bit more like, okay, well, how do we get more involved so we can kind of be a little bit aggressive on some of the funds, but then maybe be a little bit more conservative on others. So in your situation, is it usually like a portfolio that you try to help them to get into, where it's maybe stocks, maybe others, maybe investment, or what does that look like for your firm?
Yeah, no. So what you just touched on is, frankly, a very, very small part of what I do for the families I get to work with, which is investment management. So yeah, we certainly, manage money for our clients. So putting in a portfolio of stocks and bonds, whatever that looks like. But that is, I'd argue that's probably the most that's probably the simplest and most commoditized piece of the business that I'm in.
Wow.
Again, if y'all actually think about, and I'm not talking about remove the fact that you're talking to a financial planner, but actually just consider when you think of money in your life, I doubt that mutual funds and portfolios is the first thing that comes to mind. You're probably thinking about budgeting and cash flow and savings rates. And, hey, do we put more into business? Do we go buy a rental property, or do we pay off debt? Like all of these things that come up, like, hey, do we pay for kids' school? If we do we, should we put it to a 529, or how on earth are we going to navigate this? Like, there's so many things on your actual personal financial life that come up besides retirement. Like retirement is, retirement's important because it simply embodies this overall theme, which is optionality and the ability to do what you want. And really, that's what people want. People don't want to retire. They just want the freedom to do what's important to them in life.
You are absolutely right.
That's what I do to help people out. I guess, if you don't mind, I want to, you brought something up that really triggered a story that I would want to riff off of. Is that okay?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is really indicative of what you're saying is like, hey, we worked with someone before and it was vanilla, and it was, what else is there? So a few years ago, if you can't tell yet, I love what I do. I'm super passionate. I tend to be a workaholic because this is what I do for work, but it's also like my biggest hobby. I love this stuff. My wife, her name's Kendra. Kendra, a few years ago, while she was working, she desperately wanted to be able to leave work and be at home with our kids. And poor Kendra had to hear me every night talk about, client stories or, new tax strategies or whatever these things were. And she didn't understand why I get so excited about this. She's like, man, I just wish I could leave my job, yet you're so excited. You tell me stories about yours every night. I don't get it. So one night we're having dinner, and she said, Jim, I just don't understand why you like your job so much. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, it sounds really boring as a job, but also as a client experience. I said, well, Kendra, if that's the case, describe to me, when you think of a financial planner, like what I do, what comes to mind for you? So she sat back and she said, well, when I think of a financial planner, I picture walking to an office and sitting down in a big leatherback chair in a big wood office, and there's an old man sitting across from me with a big, he's wearing a suit and cufflinks and one of those white collared shirts. And he just asked me questions for like 2 hours. He's asking me about, why do I spend so much money on clothes and makeup? And how much money do I think I'm going to spend when I'm on utilities when I'm 73 years old? And then he asked me about mutual funds and rates of return and risk tolerance. And I don't know what he's talking about, but I have to nod my head or else I'll look stupid. And after all this, after 2 hours of this interrogation, he slides across a 2-inch thick booklet of charts and graphs and numbers and says, hey, you may or may not be able to retire in 35 years. Come back in a year and we'll do this again.
Wow.
So that sounds like a really boring job for you to do. And it also sounds like a pretty poor experience. Like I don't think I'd get much out of that. It's anxiety inducing, and I guess maybe a little bit informative. So okay, if that's what you think I do, and if that sounds terrible, I'm also curious to hear what would actually be a useful and good experience for you if you could have someone to go and talk to about money. She sat back and she just paused and she said, I wish that you and I had someone that we could go to together and just sit down and talk to them about what we want our life to look like, the things that we hope and dream for. I wish that we could have a trusted person that we could talk to about, hey, is it possible for me to leave my job and stay at home with the kids? And what would it look like for you to leave this job and go start your own business? And is it actually possible to not have to work until we're 65? Is there a way to get out earlier? And, what about sending the kids to private school versus public and saving for college? And man, what about getting a house in Telluride or Jackson Hole? Is that possible, or is that only for the ultra rich? And then also, making sure that we're the things I don't want to have happen, but we want to make sure, we're covered for, like have them, watch our backs in that. So really, I just wish that we had someone we could go to and talk to them about what we want our life to look like, and they help us navigate that and guide us in those decisions. Yeah. And I had the biggest grin on my face. And finally I said, well, babe, like that's what I do. I don't sell financial products. My job is to live where your life and money intersect, to be a guide on navigating those decisions to get you from where you are today to where you really hope to be, and making sure that you don't just plan for the future while neglecting today, but really being wise and considering the future while living in the present. That is what I do.
Yeah, that's a huge niche, and I'm sure the listenership that definitely resonated well with them, because it resonated well with us.
I'm grinning from ear to ear, because like what she described, what your wife described, is exactly what everybody has anxiety about when somebody brings up financial planning. It's like, oh no, not that, and then the experience that she's dreaming of is what everybody wishes for. And here you are, you provide it. So I think that's outstanding. I'm smiling from ear to ear.
Yep.
I love it.
Absolutely. So for folks that want to get in contact with you and, perhaps, learn more about your services, what's the best method for them to use?
Yeah, well, you can certainly follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Jim Crider TX, that's in Texas, so Jim Crider TX. But even better, you can go to my website. It's Intentional Living FP, as in financial planning, so intentionallivingfp.com. And on there, on the homepage, you'll see my calendar. You can feel free to put 15 minutes on my calendar. Even if you just have an easy one-off question of, I don't know what my 401k is, or I don't know what to do with my 401k, I'll be more than happy to navigate that with you. Or if you want to talk further of like, hey, what would it possibly look like to have a more in-depth conversation? I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have. Excellent,
man. Yeah, we'll make sure that this is inside the meeting notes as well, the show notes, so that way folks can easily get access to those URLs for sure. So, yeah, Jim, thank you so much, man. This has been a breath of fresh air. I cannot wait for the listenership to have you back. Hopefully, maybe sometime in 2022, get you back in there. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank y'all.
I'm still smiling.
Yeah,
looking at me like.
So Jim, you may end up getting like a meeting invite from us and kind of just have that conversation with you, man, for sure.
Hey, no, I love it. I love the questions you ask, and the way you approach things. It's true. Kind of like you said, it's this feeling that comes up with a financial planner. The connotations around that are like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's horrible. But then everyone wishes like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I don't want to be the one who raises my hand and looks stupid. So I guess I'll just put it underneath, brush it underneath the mat. But you're exactly right. Like I said, it's pretty clear, obviously. I love what I do because the impact I'm able to have, because it's not about your money. It's about helping people do what's important to them in life. Like, what an honor I get to do that on a daily basis.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, cheers to you, man, and your company. Cannot wait to have you back in 2022, man. Definitely, take care.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Couple-preneurs Show. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.kothoughtleaders.com.